Milby, am I saying that Milby?
That might be me, McNeil. My handwriting's terrible, right?
No, I just don't read right. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. I am here representing the New Hampshire Foundation, and we are a group that has been founded specifically to represent some of these farmers. I also have with me a letter from the State Grange, which I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with, that does quite a lot of representing the interests of small farmers. So while it's hard for a lot of the farmers to get here on a regular basis, especially at this time, we do have some information related to it. I'm here specifically to talk about the economic interest. I have my compatriot here who will address some of the legal issues. So with your permission, I just wanted to say that hemp has been cultivated in this area for industrial purposes and for food purposes for really since colonial times, thousands of years before that, but since colonial times in this area of the country. It's currently estimated that the global market for hemp consists of more than 25,000 products. It can be grown as a fiber, seed, or other dual-purpose crop. Hemp fibers are used in a wide range of products, including fabrics and textiles, yarns, raw and processed, spun fibers, paper, carpeting, home furnishings, construction, insulation, auto parts, and composites. Allowing New Hampshire farmers and business people to take advantage of this beneficial crop will create jobs in the state, it will allow for economic development, and it will do so in ways that are good for the environment, as well as the general health of the people of the state. This is written testimony, and I will be turning it in, so please forgive me, I'm not going to read verbatim to you. But I do want to address one specific sector of the economy that I'm sure you're all familiar with, which is the dairy business. The dairy business is about 31% of the largest single segment of New Hampshire's agricultural production. Recent experiments in the Netherlands have Dutch dairy farmers adding hemp cultivation to their repertoire because the high-protein seeds are much better than bulk hay and straw in terms of feeding their cows, and it increases the health of the cows, it adds more meat to the cows for beef production, and it also increases the quantity and quality of milk production. So if you look at the current numbers, the New Hampshire dairy industry impacts both state and local economies with more than 141 million in total output. That amounts to 3,717 jobs and more than 19 million in labor income. Whether you're looking at larger companies like Stonyfield or smaller dairies like Blake's, Burway, Brookfield Farms, Oakhurst Dairy, or Largo and Sons, I'm sure you can see how assisting that segment of the industry could help jobs and help farmers, for the dairy farmers or the people who are raising the feed for the dairy farmers within the state. Hemp cultivation is also fairly unique in that it can be profitably grown on small parcels of land. So as you drive around your districts and you see some of those fields that are used as hay fields or just some empty fields and still have the stone walls around them, those are areas of land that could potentially be put into profitable cultivation if the landowners decided to do so. I don't have a projection on the number of people who would do that because it's up to the landowners. They get to make that decision. Particular of interest to farmers in a state with an annual crop of granite in their fields is that the hemp plant can be harvested between 6 to 12 inches above the surface of the soil, so it spares farm equipment from running into those stones that grow up in your fields every year. And I just want to add that as a member of the Grange, I can state that the Grange has been a supporter of hemp cultivation for years and years. I do have attached to this written testimony a letter from the president of the Grange, one that he wrote in support of last year's bill, which is essentially the same as this year's bill. And in my contact with him over the past few days, he said, please resubmit the bill, or please resubmit my letter to the committee. And if anybody has any questions, he said that you would be open to your communicating directly with him. I do have a few other graphics as part of this packet. And obviously, we could go on and on about the economic possibilities, and I'm happy to answer any questions. But I think the salient fact here is that New Hampshire could benefit if our state law were clarified to allow farmers to grow hemp without fear of prosecution by state officials. Federal law is a separate issue, but obviously you guys are state legislatures. We'll have to take that up with the federal legislators to clarify that issue at that level. I do urge you to correct what I think has just been a simple error and confusion in this law, and vote for HB 153. Thank you very much.
Mr. McNeil, You say this is such an economic issue for the state of New Hampshire and how much it could bring in. Seeing that this is a citizen legislature, why is it taking so long to get this law changed?
I think that's a very good question. Some of you may have seen, I sent an email to the committee that actually had a video produced by the Department of Agriculture in 1942. And we've had presidents from Washington through Roosevelt begging farmers to produce hemp. The hemp plant, as we're talking about today, got confused in with other cannabis strains as part of the war on drugs. Nobody in this committee and based on this law is advocating a change to those laws. Obviously, that'd be an entirely separate bill if anybody were to do that. But things got lumped together. There has, in past committee hearings about hemp, sometimes law enforcement has brought up the issue that they have a hard time distinguishing between the plants. However, if you're growing hemp in an agricultural setting for industrial purposes, you want to grow the male plant primarily in long, closely planted rows, and you want that crop to grow 6 to 12 feet high so that you have a lot of stalk to work with. And if you're growing marijuana for recreational or medicinal purposes, you want small, bushy plants with flowers on them, and it's actually the flower that is the intoxicating part of the plant. If you plant an industrial hemp field next to a marijuana plant, you'll actually contaminate the marijuana plant and make it useless for the purposes of a drug. So it seems weirdly ironic to me that by allowing industrial hemp, you could actually make outdoor growing of marijuana less profitable for the people who are doing that and easier for law enforcement to deal with. I think the confusion mostly comes that the leaves look a lot alike, but I'm sure that anybody who has had any manner of horticultural training or, gosh, has been in Boy or Girl Scouts could tell you the difference between the two.
Thank you. Representative Fields had a question and then you speak.
No, I think you actually answered it, because I was going to ask you about hemp and how it kills other plants.
Hemp is technically considered a weed, but it grows so well and so quickly and so tall that it actually can be used as a rotational crop to kill off other weeds. So if a farmer were to use just a simple 3-field crop rotation, they could actually put hemp into that rotation, and it would help fertilize their soil and kill off the weeds that were there to make the planting of their other crops actually easier and more profitable for them. You use much less water and much less fertilizer to grow a hemp crop than you do things like corn, for instance. So it's an excellent crop for farmers, which I think, of course, it's one of the reasons the state Grange has supported it for so long.
Representative Bamford. Any other questions? Thank you, Representative Brody.
Is it true that hemp basically was outlawed about the same time as DuPont developed rayon and nylon?
Yes, that's true. There are a lot of people who think that that the petrochemical industry had it in for hemp. I choose just to say, gosh, let's bring it back.
No other questions for this gentleman? Thank you, Mr. McMahon.
Thank you.
Kevin Boone.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, good morning. I'm going to be fairly brief. I'm going to be covering international law, federal law, and state attempts. And a very, very brief history. I do have written testimony. I included in it something that you might find interesting. The law from King George I in 1719, the people of New Hampshire offering to pay them to grow hemp. It's kind of a historical curiosity. I'd like to begin my testimony by saying that it's legal. It is legal under U.S. law to import and sell products made of hemp. Several states have already passed legislation to permit the growing of industrial hemp, and they include North Dakota, Hawaii, Kentucky, Maryland, Oregon, California, Montana, West Virginia, Colorado, and both of our neighbors, Maine and Vermont. Also, the House of New Hampshire several times under either Democratic or Republican administrations. As was mentioned before, this is a bipartisan bill. Since 1999, it's the agricultural industrial hemp has passed several times, and hopefully this time's the charm, and it will go past the Senate. However, under international law, the United States is a signatory to the Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs of 1961. Article 28 of this treaty, which has the force of federal law under the U.S. Constitution, specifically excludes industrial hemp from these regulations in the following language. This convention shall not apply to the cultivation of the cannabis plant exclusively for industrial purposes. Hemp-growing countries include Canada, China, Romania, France, Germany, the Netherlands, England, Spain, South Korea, Ireland, and Hungary. Now the fun part is federal law. The regulations on hemp are found under the Controlled Substance Act of 1970. Industrial hemp products are excluded under this act, which, and I quote, does not include the mature stalks of such plant, fiber produced from such stalks, oil or cake made from the seeds of such plant, any other compound or preparation of such mature stalks, except the resin extracted therefrom, fiber, oil, or cake with the sterilized seed of such plant which is incapable of germination. There has been a court case. The 9th District Court ruled on this interpretation in Hemp Industries Association versus the Drug Enforcement Administration, February 6, 2004, which made all industrial hemp products legal in the United States. It is not illegal to grow industrial hemp in the United States under federal law. Over the past 2 years, legislation has been introduced in both the House and the Senate in Washington to clarify that industrial hemp is not the same thing as other hemp. And a little bit of history. The British began cultivating hemp in their Canadian colonies in 1606, and it began in Virginia in 1611, and in New England as early as 1632. I encourage you to vote ought to pass on HB 153 and remove industrial hemp from the list of controlled substances. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Representative Ginsburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So are you saying that the only bar in the United States at the federal level to growing hemp is its designation as a controlled substance, and that otherwise it is not illegal?
It is. It's not illegal under the Controlled Substance Act to grow hemp. It is illegal. The problem comes when the DEA is required to issue licenses at the federal level, and they won't for anybody. Yes, no. That's what came up in. There have been a couple different court rulings, but the one from the 9th Circuit said that used the interpretation that, you know, no, this is really excluded, and it shouldn't be illegal at all. So we have two conflicting decisions. It has not gone to the Supreme Court. Thank you.
Representative Gasker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since we're not really getting an answer on whether or not it's truly legal or not, has it been enforced in Maine or Vermont by the federal government?
Not to my knowledge.
Thank you.
Representative Karen.
I just wanted to